Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Rachel Buzaid. I'm a Vedic counselor who uses Vedic astrology and other healing modalities to help people uncover their karma and their cosmic imprint to understand themselves and overcome their obstacles and challenges in their life. And today, just for fun, we are going to be looking at the actor and activist Mark Ruffalo's Vedic birth chart. So I'm really excited to look at Mark Ruffalo's chart. He has been an amazing actor. I've always been a fan, especially in roles. I know this to be true on HBO Max a while back. I always loved him since I was a kid when he came out with 13 going on 30 with Jennifer Garner as like the good guy who she didn't appreciate until the end of the movie. His roles in other things like The Kids Are All Right with Julianne Moore. He's just always, you can tell, in my opinion, he has some sort of moral, deep character to him. And so I'm really excited to look at his chart and kind of go through his bio with you all. But recently, he's been a really big advocate, outspoken about what's going on in Palestine. He's always been, he kind of got famous years ago through his anti-fracking stance in upstate New York that was impacting him personally. And ever since then, he's been a big social activist. So let's look at his chart. I'm going to share it here with you all. All right. So here we have his chart. This is a Vedic birth chart using the Vedic system, also called Jyotish. It is different than Western astrology. It follows the lunar calendar instead of the sun, which Western uses. And it also follows transits in real time, not according to our Western calendar. So let's get started. So here is his birth chart right here. This is a North Indian Vedic system, our Vedic birth chart. So we have, it's based, the houses are always going to be 1 through 12 on the North Indian chart. So here is the first house, and it goes counterclockwise 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the signs, the zodiac signs will change depending on the ascendant or the rising sign, but the houses stay the same. So let's get started. Here we can already see that Mark Ruffalo is a Scorpio ascendant or a Scorpio rising. That means he is ruled by the planet Mars, which we will want to look at. Also, right away, we see his sun, the essence of his soul, his ego, the way he feels is right on his ascendant. That is already really telling. It's in Anuradha Nakshatra, and his ascendant is also in Anuradha Nakshatra. Anuradha is a nakshatra that is fully in the sign of Scorpio. So nakshatras are star constellations or lunar mansions that take us even further into the psychology of someone's zodiac placements. So even though it's in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, Anuradha is a nakshatra that's ruled by Saturn. So it's fusing the energies of Mars and Saturn. Anuradha is known for being completely devoted to God and devoted to people, companionships. They are very friendly. Anuradha is actually personally like my favorite nakshatra within Scorpio, because these people are much softer and much more friendly than I find Scorpios tend to sometimes be. You know, Scorpio is a very transformative sign. It can be just extremely uncomfortable because it's when fire and water merge. And so Scorpio wants control of themselves and their emotions, but they're extremely emotional. So those energies can be really tough to balance. Um, so Anuradha kind of has a more Saturnine kind of, and you would think Saturn is heavy, right? But Saturn kind of brings a little bit more calm to that Martian energy. So extremely devoted to others, extremely committed. A Narada is extremely committed to their relationships. Um, and when the sun is on someone's ascendant, I have been taught and I have seen that a lot of times, that can mean a very big ego, but it can also mean a very impactful father because the sun represents the father. The moon represents the mother. So it's the same if you see the moon on someone's ascendant. A lot of times that means the mother is having a huge impact on them. But here he has the sun, which is interesting, right? Because honestly, Mark doesn't really seem to have a big ego. He's actually extremely humble if you've heard him talk. So it makes me wonder about his relationship with his father. And in an interview he recently did with Zateo with Mehdi Hassan, which I'm going to put the link in under this video as well for you to watch it because Mark is just extremely passionate and extremely um, just extremely, it'll make you love him even more. But he talks actually about how impactful his father was in his life. His father was of the Baha'i faith, which is a faith that actually came out of Persia. And it is known for being all about acceptance, love for humanity, and just all kind of coexisting. So it's actually a very peaceful and a very loving faith. And, he has an Italian Catholic background as well. And he states in this interview how his father and his, activism and his love for humanity and the lessons he learned from the Baha'i faith had a deeply profound impact on him. And this is why he thinks he is so into social rights and such a humanitarian. So that's where I think he's getting that's a huge quality here to the sun on his first house. He also has Neptune in the first house. So Neptune is a higher octave of Venus. It is an outer planet. Some Vedic astrologers don't use the outer planets, but I think, and a lot of my teachers think it's super important. Neptune is illusions. It's also very spiritual, very Venusian, very beautiful, but it's like mystical more. So I personally, spoiler alert, have Neptune on my ascendant, so I can speak pretty clearly on this. Neptune on the ascendant, remember the ascendant is your personality, it's your physical body, it's yourself. It creates confusion and almost it can create self-image issues. Kind of like I don't know who I am. Myself can create, issues with how others see you, that kind of thing, which I think is actually having a big impact on because otherwise, the sun on the ascendant by itself, you would worry this person might have a really big ego. I feel like that Neptune there is having a pretty big impact. I also want to, I'll get to this when we talk about his Venus and his other placements, but Neptune on the ascendant and in certain places of the chart can create a very empathic person and a very spiritual person. Like I said, Neptune is mystical. So a lot of times Neptune on the ascendant creates somebody who can either be very spiritual themselves or can easily be spiritual if they wanted to be, and they can either have psychic gifts. So we already know his ascendant and his sun. They're in the same exact placement. His sun is within 7 degrees of his ascendant, so it's not right on top of it. The degrees really matter. So the second thing we want to look at is his moon placement. The moon in Vedic astrology is your emotions, your mind. In Vedic astrology, it's the most important planet. That's what the whole system is based off of because it's how you feel about yourself. His moon is here in the ninth house. The ninth house represents your dharma. It's a very auspicious house. It's a house of higher knowledge, spirituality, learning, foreign places for learning and education. It's the father, the house of the father, and it's your belief systems. It's your moral code. His moon being there is super, super telling. It's also in a nakshatra called Pushya, fully within the sign of Cancer. So his moon is in Cancer in Pushya. This guy is very, very sensitive and very, very caring, but he's emotionally attached to his belief systems. And Pushya is one of the most auspicious nakshatras in Vedic astrology because its deity is Brihaspati. I'm not great at pronouncing these, which is Jupiter, the guru of the gods, the teacher of all. And even though Saturn rules Pushya and doesn't always get along with Jupiter, these two fusing together create a very, very dharmic person. So these people can be very dogmatic in their beliefs, but it's literally symbolized by the cow's udder, and they are here to nourish others. I know a lot of Pushyas, and they are extremely nourishing, extremely nurturing, and they're extremely noble, and people look up to them because they're always trying to do the right thing. There's a humbleness to Pushya. They're not in it for themselves. They're in it for the world. So I just think that that is like a huge piece of him, Moon and Pushya. And it's super telling. So it also shows me his good relationship with his father. So his right here, the sun is in Anurata Nakshatra, showing that he's very devoted and has a committed relationship to his father, right? Then the house of the father is he's emotionally tied to his dad. He's tied to his beliefs, and he views his dad as a very dharmic person, someone who does the right thing, someone who helps humanity. So all of this is really, really checking out. So we know his sun sign, we know his moon sign. So let's look kind of at the rest of his chart. So I also wanted to kind of pull up a little bio for Mark Ruffalo so that we can check some of these things out in real time. So Mark Ruffalo, he actually didn't have an easy career path. It took him a very long time to get noticed, recognition, and to get good roles. He attributes his wife to always standing by him and really helping him, like with his career and with all the hardships that it put on the family and et cetera, right? Another thing about Mark Ruffalo is that his brother was murdered in Los Angeles, December 1st, 2008. His name was Scott Ruffalo. The cops never found out who did it, which was just extremely brutal on Mark. And I think everything that kind of transpired with the police and how it was handled and how, there was never any conclusion really affected him. Then later, the whole issue of fracking in upstate New York, I think was impacting his family's land. And that's when he started getting, very open about his activism and about social issues. But another thing that really was super impactful to him was that he actually had a tumor in his brain, or it was technically in his left ear, but it was affecting his brain. And he had to have surgery to get it removed, and it paralyzed half of his face for a while. So if you've ever wondered what was going on, I know people have brought that up. He did have paralysis for a while. And what was crazy about when he found out, how he found out he had a tumor, he actually had a dream that he had a tumor in his brain. And the next day he told, someone on set that he worked with about it. And they were like, let's get you a CT scan, like right away. Lo and behold, he had a tumor impacting his brain. So, right, that Neptune on the ascendant, having those psychic gifts, he's very, in his own way, he is very spiritual. And also, right, he has that connection to the Baha'i faith, which, in my opinion, is a very spiritual faith if you're going to pick a faith. So, very interesting, right? So he's had a lot of ups and downs, and he's had a lot of hardship. So I want to look at his spouse house, and I want to look at his Venus placement, his Rahu, his Ketu, the karmic nodes, and his soul planet Mars here. So Scorpio ascendants always have their spouse house, which is directly in opposition, as Taurus. So Scorpios usually have a pretty beneficial spouse. Taurus is ruled by Venus. So there's no planets here, but his blessing point here is in the seventh house in Rohini. Rohini is ruled by the moon, fusing Venus and the moon's energies. So it's very creative, very sensual, very beautiful, artistic, also very sensitive, but more in a very in tune with their feelings, but there's not always with Rohini an understanding of why, if that makes sense. So they can be very like, ooh, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. But they're not so much worried about the why it doesn't feel good, but they're very in tuned to how things make them feel. So they're sensitive in that way, which is different, right, than the sensitivity of a Cancer or a Pisces. but they still feel, I think, very, very sensitive. So that's interesting. The seventh house also represents business partnerships or contractual agreements. So he might have blessings throughout his life with business partners and contracts for work, but we want to see where the ruler of this house is. So we want to see where Venus is. Venus is here, VE, in the 11th house of friends, the collective, community, networks, your desires, like your long-term desires, future goals, fulfilling those desires. It's here in the 11th house and it's debilitated in Virgo. Super interesting to me because he has this really long-term marriage. I think over 20 years they've been married. They're super committed to each other, right? And that's his anurata there. He's committed. It's very important to him to be a committed person. And it's here, and Venus, when it's debilitated in Virgo, will always bring karma to relationships. Venus in Virgo can be great for attention to detail and for creativity because you're so precise and exact. But for love, right, it's Venus is going to have to act in Virgo, which is a analytical, logical sign that can be critical. So there can be a focus on perfection and being a little bit too critical. Um, right. So that's curious to me. I also, not always, I have seen a lot of Venus debilitated in Virgo placements. Natives with this placement struggle with empathy, right? So I'm kind of like, that's interesting because Mark is super empathetic. Um, he's very, very, if you hear him speak, you will understand what I mean. Um, he's very, very empathetic, and especially to those who are in need. Um, However, we always want to check the D9. So this chart over here, when something is debilitated or exalted, to see the true strength of that exaltation or that debilitation, because the D9 shows us, it's the spouse chart, yes, but it's also the essence of the soul. And it really kicks in when someone turns 40. So it's kind of like the soul's true chart, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to articulate and it would take a lot of time. But his Venus is not debilitated in his D9 chart. It's actually in Cancer, in Punarvasu, which is a very optimistic, loving, empathetic placement for Venus. Another thing, right away, we see Parivartana here in the birth chart. Parivartana is an exchange of signs, which really helps a debilitation. So, what I mean by that is Mercury rules Virgo, and Libra, number 7, rules or is ruled by Venus. Mercury is here in Libra, ruled by Venus, and Venus is here in Mercury, or here in Virgo, ruled by Mercury. They are exchanging signs. So even though Venus is debilitated, it's acting more like it's in Libra, its own sign. And Mercury is acting more like it's in its own sign of Virgo. So with that, and Venus being in Cancer in his D9, I'm seeing a lot of grace here with this debilitated Venus. I'm not saying he hasn't had karma in his relationships, which is kind of how it plays out when Venus is debilitated. It's great for creativity, but it can create some stuff that needs to be hashed out. But I don't think it's affecting his empathy, and I think it's giving him a lot of grace in relationships as well. So his Venus is here. It's with Uranus. Uranus is the outer planet of sudden change. So there might have been, some sudden change with friends or his community. There might have been kind of some stuff that has come up in his life. The 11th house is also fulfilling your desires. And right, it took Mark a long time to fulfill his career desires, to fulfill his aspirations. So even though Venus has that parivartana, it still gave him a little bit of trouble there. Another thing to look at when we speak of his career is the 10th house, the 6th house, and the 5th house is the house of creativity over here. So we can look first, well, first I want to look at his 5th house because I'm going to show you how it's connected to the 10th. So the 5th house here is the house of creativity. It's the house of you expressing yourself. You can see a lot of actors, a lot of creatives have very strong 5th houses. It can also be a house for sports and entertainment. And it's the greatest creative project of all is children. So it is the house of children. So the fifth house, it has Saturn in retrograde in Pisces in Uttara Bhadrapada. Super interesting, right? Because he had all these delays to his career in acting. Fifth house is the house of acting and creativity. And it has Saturn. It's also in retrograde in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. And they're in astrology, they're not really friends. However, Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, even though it's in Pisces, is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn can do quite well here. However, Saturn is the planet of heavy karma. Wherever it is in the chart, it's going to bring restriction, delays. It's going to force you to take on responsibility, to be dutiful, to be structured, to be disciplined, right? So he has a really big karma with his creative projects this life. Retrograde is always going to bring up some sort of difficulty. A lot of astrologers thinks it forces the energy of the planet inward into the self. But the fifth house is also our past life credit. So this is what I wanted to bring up. So there's structure, responsibility, delays, and responsibility around his creative projects. And the ruler of this house for him is Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Pisces, which is number 12 here, the last sign. So when we look at his past life credit, we can see that because it's ruled by Jupiter and Jupiter is here in the 10th house of career and reputation, his past life credit is actually with his career. Okay, so that's really interesting. Jupiter here is in Leo in his 10th house. Number 5 represents Leo here. And I really like Jupiter and Leo. Jupiter and Sun are friends. Jupiter expands, wherever it is. It's the guru planet. It's expansion. It's abundance. It's the teacher. It's optimistic. So it's in Magha. Magha Nakshatra is a nakshatra ruled by Ketu, the spiritual moksha karmic node that separates us from the material and what we need to shed. What's interesting, right? What I said about Mark is that I feel like he's actually very humble. Magha, when in balance, because out of balance is another story. Wounded Magha is different, but an unwounded Magha is, right? So K2 is the karmic node without a head. It has no aspirations, it has no desires, whereas Rahu, the north karmic node, is what our soul's desires are. Okay, it's what the soul's material wants are. So it's like Magha represents the patriarchy, the leader, royalty in some ways, like the establishment. So when you have K2 in this position, the karma here is to learn how to be a humble leader, a leader without a head, someone that's not here for the recognition. The problem is Magha, because of its royalty, its royal status, and it's considered as there's a connection to the father with Magha, is what I'm trying to say. There's a connection with ancestors. So there's a burden here these people feel, an ancestral burden a lot of times. And a lot of times there's a feeling of entitlement. Like I deserve this, I deserve that, and you should respect me. So Jupiter and K2 are both very spiritual planets. So I feel like Jupiter actually can do quite well in this K2 ruled nakshatra. It is conjunct with Pluto, the outer planet of intense transformation and issues of control and betrayal a lot of times. So he might have also felt that in his career. He's probably had to deal with a lot of lessons of not just transformation, but control, probably within his workplace. I can only imagine how Hollywood, the industry itself, for anybody would be that way. But yeah, he's here to be a teacher as well. Like Jupiter is the guru planet. So it's bringing luck, it's bringing prosperity to his 10th house. And it's also, there's a teaching quality here. So I find that also really interesting. And remember, Jupiter aspects 5, 7, and 9 from itself. So it's giving grace to his 4th house here, his inner emotions, his heart space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's nicely aspecting Mars, considered a malefic planet, in its own sign of Sagittarius. The 2nd house here represents your financial assets, your speech, and your family of origin. And then it's also aspecting 9 from itself, so 7, 8, 9, and it's nicely aspecting Rahu, another malefic, down here in the sixth house of obstacles, work, the day-to-day routine, competitors, co-workers, etc. So there's Jupiter. Now let's look at his Rahu and Ketu placements. So his Rahu is here in the sixth house in Aries, represented by number 1. And it's in another Ketu ruled nakshatra called Ashwini. Ashwini is also fully in Aries. It's the first nakshatra of all the nakshatras. There's 27. So it's literally known for birthing, like it's the first. Ashwini can be impulsive, but it's carrying, it's very Martian. So Mars rules Aries, Ketu rules Ashwini. So it's actually pretty, Mars and Ketu together, merging those two energies can be pretty explosive and pretty transformative. Ashwini is known for being impulsive. It's here to, explore itself, put itself first, put its desires first. Bharani, the next nakshatra after Ashwini, is more known for the death and rebirth and the transformation. And so Ashwini is a little bit softer in some ways, but it's still, direct in speech. There, because it's ruled by Ketu, there can be a connection to heights. My mom personally, she has a lot of Ashwini and she was a rock climber for a very long time. And you see that with a lot of rock climbers, you see Ashwini or people who aren't afraid of heights. But and Ashwini also can have a connection to horses. But having his Rahu here, Rahu again is the north karmic node that represents what our soul is here to master. It wants to master Aries, it wants to master Ashwini, and it's here in the sixth house. First of all, Rahu does well in the sixth house because the sixth house is mastering the day-to-day. It's work. It's actually the day-to-day at the workplace. It's not just the 10th house. It's also the sixth house. It's your competitors and your coworkers, and it's your physical health. Okay. It's also the house of service. So it can be, being of service. You see a lot of service roles here, like nurses, people in the food industry, hospitality, those types of things. So, he's here to master the day-to-day. He's here to master work. And I think he's been working hard his entire life, with the ups and downs and the discipline that has required him for his career. He's here to have a very strong sense of self. It's Aries, it's Ashwini. But again, Rahu in the sixth house does really well because Rahu is a malefic that can combat and can withstand the hardships of the sixth house. So the sixth house is an obstacle house. It's a Jashtana house. It's a house of suffering. It's the house of challenges. So Rahu is going to help him overcome obstacles, overcome challenges, and it's with the force of Mars and Ketu. So that's a pretty powerful placement. Rahu will bring illusions to sixth house matters. It will bring challenges, but it will give him the power to overcome them. And then, directly in opposition is going to be Ketu, the south karmic node, right? We've been talking about Ketu, the planet that detaches us. It's here in the 12th house with Mercury. They're not very tight, but the 12th house represents endings. It's, the death and so if you want to understand these signs, it goes from Aries all the way to Pisces. And Pisces is the zodiac sign of endings, closures, death, so that a rebirth can happen. Aries is birth. Pisces is death. Okay, so the 12th house is very spiritualizing. It's a moksha house. It is a house of suffering because it is a house of loss. It's also, we can see how people spend their money in this house. We can see charitable people in this house. We can also see this is the house of hidden enemies, whereas the sixth house is the house of enemies that are known, more like competitors or stuff at the workplace. Whereas, the 12th house are enemies that you don't know about. Right. And remember, we have that parivartana going on with Venus and Mercury. So, however, Mercury is still the planet in his 12th house. The 12th house shows us past life debt, past life issues that still need to be resolved. So Mercury is here. Mercury represents communication. It's the son of the moon. So it's the child, it's the witty one. But being in Libra, the house of diplomacy, the sign of diplomacy and relationships, there's a karma around communication with others. K2 is here as well. So when, K2 conjunct with another planet shows us what he's already mastered in a past life, but it still has some residual karma that he needs to clean up. So there is a there's a deep karma with Mercury for him. There's a part of him too that probably doesn't really want to be communicative or to share ideas and isn't interested in Mercury qualities, but there's still some things that he needs to do here. Um, so that's really interesting. Mercury in the 12th house can be very creative as well because, right, Mercury is the cognitive mind. The 12th house is very imaginative because it's just so out there, right? It's spiritual. There's a connection to foreign places and the ocean, the deep waters. Think of Pisces. So people can have really imaginative minds when Mercury is here. So that's really interesting. And let's look again at, or not again, let's finally look at his Mars placement, also his soul planet. A soul planet is the planet in the highest degrees of the chart, and it is really important because it shows the energy that this person is here to take on. Okay? So Mars in Sagittarius in the second house in the nakshatra called Uttara Ashada. Now, I think this one is just like literally is so telling of who Mark Ruffalo has become. And this is why. Mars, okay, the second house is the house of speech. It's the house of family of origin. It's the house of material assets, but it is your voice. So Mars is here. It's in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. Sagittarius is the sign of truth, finding the truth, being dharmic. It's a morally ethical, focused sign. It's a truth seeker. It's here for spiritual wisdom and spiritual knowledge. When Mars is the planet of action and willpower and courage, okay? So he's here to be courageous with his voice, right? This is his soul planet. It's in Sagittarius. To take it further, it's in Uttara Ashada. Uttara Ashada is a nakshatra that's deity is the universal gods, the Vishvadevas. They are here. They are focused on the moral and ethical code of humanity. They are here to do the right thing. So this guy is like a moral orator. I mean, he's literally here to speak the truth and what he thinks is ethically moral. Okay? Like this is what he's here to do. Mars is like bringing passion to this Jupiterian Sagittarius truth. And Uttara Ashada, it actually spans the end of Sagittarius and Capricorn. And it takes on totally different energies in Capricorn than it does Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter while Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So when it's in Saturn, Uttara Ashada, it's more focused on responsibility and hard work. Capricorn things, structure, it's a bit rigid. But in Sagittarius, it's a lot more expansive and it's softer. It's ruled by the sun either way, but it's fusing the sun and Jupiter. And now it has Mars in there. So this is a spiritual powerhouse in the house of the voice. So super, super telling. That really, for me, that just kind of knocks it out of the water here. So I hope you all find that interesting as well. If we look at his, his Mahadasha, the time period he's been in his Venus Mahadasha, which lasts 20 years. He's going to get out of it and it'll turn into the sun next June 2nd, 2026. He's currently in his Venus K2, so that's activating his Venus here in the 11th and his K2 here in the 12th. But Venus is actually one of his Karaka or his death planets. Death planets are represented by the second house and the seventh house. So Mars and Jupiter, because it rules Sagittarius, and Venus, because it rules Taurus, are his death planets. And I would say, yes, he's had great gains, right? His 11th house of gains, fulfilling desires, his reputation. There's definitely a karma with the collective, which is also the 11th house, has happened. But there's also been literal death. His brother died. Let's see, it was 2008. That was literally in his Venus period. That was really tough. So that's really interesting. Now he's in his Venus K2. So these are the two houses it's activating. It's second from Venus, so there might be, right? The second house is it's so 1, 2. That's what I'm trying to say. From Venus, K2 is 2 houses away. So the second house represents the voice as well. He's been very vocal lately about what's going on. So yeah, trying to think. We could look at other charts, but we'll save that for another day. I'm going to link the Zateo interview that really inspired me about Mark Ruffalo to do this chart. But I've been following him for quite a while, and I hope you all do too. And I hope you enjoyed this little reading. Hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you'd like to check out my services or my website, that'll also be below. And I hope you all have a really great day. Thanks for being here with me, and namaste.